The stats say that the Halifax real estate market is healthy, but talk to any agent and they'll tell you that something feels just a little bit off. We've had more sales, higher price points, and more listings so far in 2025, but buyers are getting pickier and sellers are being very stubborn with their price points. It's not really the balanced market that everybody was hoping for. It's more of a standoff. The truth is, the market feels very out of sync with buyers and sellers living in two different realities. So the question is, what's really going on and how does this affect you if you're looking to buy or sell a home? In this video, I'm going to dive into the mid-year 2025 market stats for your market update, and I'm also going to dive into some trends that we've been seeing on the ground level when we're out there working with our buyer and seller clients. But just before I get into it, if you're new here, my name is Andrew Stevens. I've been a realtor in Halifax for over 10 years. And if you want to be educated on the Halifax real estate market, then hit that like button and hit that subscribe button. And if you're thinking about making a move in the Halifax and Dartmouth area, you can reach out to me anytime in the Calendly link below. All right, let's dive right into the market update. This is all the stats year to date, January 1st to July 1st. So first things first, this year in Halifax, we've sold more homes than we did last year. In fact, we're up 2.7% to a total of 2,669 sales in the first 6 months of the year. In terms of an average sale price of these sales, this is also higher than it was last year. We're sitting just over $606,000. And that's increased by 4.5% year over year. And I would say this is very in line with what we've been seeing over the past 40 years in terms of that 4.5–5% year over year growth on average. So this number makes, quite a bit of sense. I've been talking about that number for quite a bit on this channel, as you know, if you've been following along. Now, in terms of listing inventory, right now we have a little bit more listing inventory than we did at this point last year. We have about 250 to 300 more listings now than we did in the same time frame in 2024, which works out to about 2.2 months of listing inventory, which is still a seller's market. But we're going to get into this in a little bit when I dive into the trends. And right now there's about 1,250 active homes for sale in the HRM. So those are all the stats for year to date, January 1st to the middle of this year. But if I look at June 2025 versus June 2024, just that 1 month specifically, we're seeing very similar increases. Sales in June 2025 were 7.3% higher than they were in June of 2024. And the average sale prices were also up 4.6% versus June 2024. So in June, and this year in general, we're selling more homes over the same time period, and we're selling them for more money over the same time period that we did in 2024. So what's the problem and what are we seeing on the ground level? Well, for starters, buyers are certainly seemingly getting a lot more picky. They're looking for more value. The price points are gone up, so they're looking for more value for what they're buying. There's a lot more listings that are available, and with that rising inventory level, I think they have the perception that they're going to get a better deal or that they are going to get more value for their money. But the truth is, the price points keep going up, and the sellers on the other side of the coin have been very stubborn. A lot of cases, they're hanging on to 2021 and 2022 price points along with those expectations of what the market looked like at that point. So it's sort of become a standoff, right? But at the same time, again, we're selling more homes for more money. And truthfully, the stats are healthy and they look good, but it doesn't really tell the story of what the perception is on the ground level with buyers, with sellers, and with us as agents as well. So for those of you who don't know, yes, I am an active realtor. I do a lot of business throughout the HRM every year, myself and my team, that is, but I'm also a brokerage owner. We have about 85 agents at our office. So I hear a lot of things through the grapevine, and agents come and talk to me about the market and what we're seeing. And I'm getting a lot of the same sentiment. Agents coming to me, asking me, what do I think about the price of this listing? It's not moving. They're not getting showings the way they thought. People are kind of discouraged. People are worried about how slow the market is. But then on the flip side, some listings are still selling very quickly for top dollar and over asking. Just today, as I'm filming this video, I wrote an offer on a listing that had 8 offers. We were well over the asking price, and we weren't even close to my knowledge. At least that's the perception I got from the listing agent when I got the rejected offer. So it is still hot out there, and it's very, very product specific. And although some sellers are getting more desperate to sell their home, they're not exactly willing to budge on the price, right? They're saying, I want more marketing, I want more open homes, all these things, but they're not necessarily willing to drop the price. And oftentimes it is very price dependent. But then you have the buyers on the other end saying, well, I'm not going to overpay. I'll wait. There's more inventory coming to the market. I think there's a sentiment in general from the buyer perspective that people are hard up financially. And because of this, we're going to start seeing some foreclosures and things like that, which, by the way, we haven't really been seeing a whole lot of. And I don't really think we're going to see a ton of them because most of the people that it would be foreclosed on would have enough equity in their home over the last few years to get out of it without losing their house altogether. So they probably have enough equity to sell, pay the commissions and everything, and get out, and probably still have a pretty good chunk to put in the bank after that. Or they could refinance and work with their debt load to stay within their property. I think there's a lot of things people could do to get creative because of the equity they're going to have if they've been in their home for more than 3 or 4 years. Now, like I said, this is very property dependent and it's very price point dependent as well. Those lower price points are still much more challenging than the higher price points. And a lot of this has to do with the amount of listing inventory that we have within these price points. So right now, as it sits, we have about 1,250 active listings on the market. Now, based on that, we have between $0 and $500,000 in terms of the price point. We have about 1.7 months of listing inventory, which is a seller's market. And this was 1.1 months just 3 months ago. From $500,000 to $750,000, we have 2.5 months of listing inventory. And this was 1.8 months of listing inventory just 3 months ago. From 750,000 to $1 million, we have 5 months of listing inventory, which is more in a balanced market and kind of approaching a buyer's market. And this was 3.9 months just 3 months ago. And over $1 million, we are in a pretty heavy buyer's market at 10 months of listing inventory. And again, this was 7.6 months of listing inventory just 3 months ago. So just within 1 quarter, there's been a huge surge of listing inventory, and not just at the higher price points. I would suggest that we're approaching more of a balanced market, but again, it doesn't really feel like that when we're out there with our buyer and seller clients. But I can tell you this, if you have a high-end home listed, you're probably going to wait longer for it to sell. And in general, even if your home is priced well, you might wait longer to sell, just purely based on the fact that now there is a little bit more supply in the market, and the demand, I would say, hasn't really shifted. And if anything, it might have gone down as people are priced out. We're seeing a little bit less immigration and all these factors that are going into the demand, not to mention the uncertainty that we're seeing in our market and all these things that people are concerned about, which certainly plays a part. I don't necessarily think there's one big thing that is affecting the market right now. I think it's a lot of little things that are all coming together, and it's kind of like death by 1,000 paper cuts. Not that I think we're in a death market. I don't think we're going to tank or anything like that. But as a general statement, I would say it's a little bit slower now than it was earlier this year. But at the same time, again, sales are still up, price points are still up. So I'm not super concerned yet at this point. So what's this mean for you if you're looking to buy or sell a home in HRM in the latter half of 2025? Well, first of all, if you're selling, you better make sure your price is bang on very accurate. And even if your price is accurate, you need to make sure that your expectations are in line with reality. Just because you price it right does not necessarily mean that it's going to sell over a weekend. Look, we were spoiled for a long time, 2020, 2021, 2022, and even some parts of 23 and 24, and this year, depending on what the product was. Things were selling very quickly for top dollar, sometimes over asking price, or oftentimes over asking price. But just because you price it right now doesn't mean it's going to sell right away, especially in certain markets, especially some of the higher end homes and some of the suburb markets. It just might not happen. And you need to understand the market within your neighborhood, what's happening with similar homes that have been listed recently, how much competition is out there, what is the inventory level, because here's the thing. If the demand is down for high-end homes in your particular market, if you're not the best priced or the best product or both, you are probably not going to be the next one to sell, right? Other people are going to look at apples to apples and they're going to pick another home over yours if that is the case. So just keep in mind that even if it's priced right, it doesn't mean it's going to sell right away. It might take some time, and this comes down to the conversations that you should be having with your agent up front in terms of what the real expectations are, not what you heard from a friend at work or from an uncle who sold in a completely different market than you. It doesn't really matter. What only matters is your particular market. And buyers, if you're looking to buy a home, Just because it's been sitting on the market longer does not necessarily mean you're going to get a deal on it. I think there's a big perception that because a home's been sitting for 90 days or 120 days, that we can now get you a great deal. And that might be the case in a lot of cases, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. Here's something to think about. Maybe the home is sitting on the market longer because the seller's overpriced and they refuse to price drop to get it to a level that it needs to be. And maybe that is why their home is sitting on the market longer. Again, it's very case by case, but that's something that you might notice. Overall, it's certainly an interesting time to be working with buyers and sellers in Halifax. The market is always changing and the inventory level is starting to rise. And I would say we're approaching a balanced market. I'll be very, very interested to see what happens over the next 3 to 6 months. But overall, am I concerned about the market? Not really. But does it, is it finicky? Is it sort of weird depending on what you're doing? And all these little different micro markets are very different? Yes, absolutely. For example, if you list an $800,000 home in the west end of Halifax, it might sell overnight. But an $800,000 beautiful home in Fall River could sit on the market for 120 or longer days. And it just kind of is what it is. It depends where the demand is. It depends what the competition level is in your market. So the micro markets are really important to understand if you're buying or selling a home. And just before I go, I'm curious if you've bought or sold recently, or if you're in the process of doing so. I'm curious to hear about your experience in the comments below, so you can tell us what's been happening during your particular journey. I'd love to get some dialogue started down there. And until next time, I really appreciate your support. Thank you for watching and have a great day.